Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this live webinar that is being organised as part of the Humber Apprenticeship Showcase, brought to you by SpringPod. My name is Molly. I will be hosting today's session. I just want to go through a few housekeeping bits and pieces before we do get into the chat today. So today's talk will last for about 45 minutes. Please don't forget to use the Q&A function to ask questions of our guest today. I am sure he would love to answer them, and it's exactly why he's here, so please make use of that. It's also good to note that due to the number of questions that normally do come through, we may not get a chance to answer every single question. So if a question pops up that maybe you also wanted to ask, we have what is called an upvote function. So you can just click that, add your vote to the question, it will go to the top of the pile. We will be asking the top voted questions today. If for any reason you missed this webinar or need to leave halfway through, we do have you covered. This will be recorded, and we always aim to have the recording available within 24 hours, so you can come back and watch it on demand as many times as you like. You can add a few extra notes, all that good stuff. So in today's webinar, we're going to be chatting about Wienerberger, and joining me to do just that is Rob. Rob, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Now, you have a presentation, so by all means, take it away. Guys, if you have questions, please send them through. Rob is very happy to answer those.
I do. Good morning, everyone. So I'll run through the presentation that I've got to give you some information, and then I'm more than happy to take questions after that about what you've seen or anything else in general, any other questions you might have on apprenticeships in general or the company. So as you've said, my name is Rob Jolland. So I currently work as the engineering training manager for Wienerberger UK. So our head office in the UK is in Cheadle in Manchester, but my main factory is in Santhoff near Doncaster. So I myself served as an engineering apprenticeship and worked in the steel industry. I worked there for about sort of 20 years before I started in this role in June last year. So I'm fairly new to this role. I completed a business degree through my employer, and that was off the back of serving an apprenticeship. I've worked in engineering and operations, and when I left British Steel, I was a training manager and worked in a role within HR. So in terms of apprenticeships, there's quite a few myths surrounding apprenticeships, that apprenticeships are only for people who want to work in the likes of engineering, which might be sort of car garages or heavy engineering. Apprenticeships that are low-level qualifications. If you serve an apprenticeship and you graduate, that you're not guaranteed a job. And if you do serve an apprenticeship, that, as I say, the actual qualification that you get is of a low level, which, as I say, is not strictly true. There are a lot of myths around it, and hopefully today, when I talk to you, you'll realise that apprenticeship is actually a sort of very attractive way of starting in the world of work. So the actual facts are there's no maximum age limit on apprenticeships, so you can start an apprenticeship now at any age. There's more than 500 apprenticeship standards within the UK, and that covers everything from horticulture, law, engineering, like we spoke about, everything in between. Apprenticeships can start at level 2, which is the equivalent, if you served a level 2 apprenticeship, it's the equivalent to 5 GCSEs at grades A to C, or level 9 to 4 nowadays, and they go all the way up to a level 7 apprenticeship, which is the equivalent of a master's degree. So statistically, about 30% of uni leavers enter the job market on a salary of about 20 to 24,000, and that drops to 10% of uni leavers starting in the job market on a salary of about 30 to 35,000. So the average apprenticeship salary in the UK is £19,000, and most employers do take apprentices on in September. It's not fixed; they can be started at any time. Traditionally, apprenticeships follow the academic year, September to sort of June, July time, but a lot of training providers now will start an apprenticeship at any time of the year. So the UK currently has a massive engineering skills gap. So about 20% of the UK's engineering workforce that are employed at the minute are due to retire by 2026. So that is a massive amount. It doesn't mean they're definitely going to, but they'll be of the age where they can. Engineering, the actual term, I keep saying engineering, it covers a massive field, both in terms of academic study and careers. But generally, most engineering jobs will tie back to having in common science, maths, and some sort of D&T, resistant materials that you might study or might have studied within school. Within the Humber side, Yorkshire and Humber region, the average salary within engineering is about £37,000. So it's quite a high salary compared to other fields and other occupations. When we talk about engineering apprenticeships, generally they start at level 3 and are about 4 years in duration. A level 3 apprenticeship, which is what I would say is most common within engineering, is equal to an A level in terms of academic status. So when we hear people say if you do an apprenticeship, it's not a high level, it's low level, you need to go to university and do a high level qualification to get a skilled job, that's not strictly true. And as I said, if you do decide you want to look at something higher academically than a level 3, you can actually now enroll in a level 4, 5, 6 degree level apprenticeship. It might last a little bit longer, but at the end of it, you'll have the equivalent qualification. But while you've done it, you'll actually be earning money the entire time that you're studying. So, Wienerberger UK, most people, I'm not offended by it, most people have not heard of Wienerberger, but they are the world's largest producer of bricks and clay blocks and clay roof tiles. They are based, the main head office is in Vienna on the European continent. Within the UK, they employ about 12 to 1,500 people at 12 sites, geographically sort of spread out across the UK. As a company, we take on 10 engineering apprentices every year. So in terms of other apprentices, we do take other apprentices on in finance, procurement, planning, but what we tend to do with them is take them on 1 or 2 at a time at different times of the year. Our engineering apprenticeship scheme that we run is probably the one that I would say is a proper scheme, whereby we do take on it with a September intake and take about 10 on per year. Our current maintenance engineer salary starts at £38,000. So should you serve an apprenticeship and then graduate, come out your time, starting salary for factories as a maintenance engineer is £37,000. So in this region, within the Yorkshire and Humber region, we've got factories at Broomfleet, near Brough on the north bank, at Goxhill on the south bank of the Humber, and one at Santhoff near Doncaster, which is where I'm based. Our partner training provider is HETA, Humberside Engineering Training Association. In this region, we have a fantastic relationship with them, and we are currently going through the recruitment process to select the apprentices that we want in this region starting in September. So should you be interested in an engineering apprenticeship, I would certainly say that HETA is one of the places that I would direct you to look on their website, to consider an application. And I believe in the next 2 weeks, they've got 2 open days. The information will be on the website where you can go, speak to the staff at HETA, see the sort of things that you would learn as an apprentice at HETA, and I'll be there. And you could also potentially meet some of their partner employers, which we are one of which, and you can see the sort of companies that you could potentially serve an apprenticeship in should you be successful. Our current apprentices enrol on a 4-year apprenticeship, and the current standard we use, for those familiar with it, is the MOE standard for multi-skilled technicians. Traditionally, within engineering, you would find that you would have a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer. More modern thought on that is that what we tend to do is train multi-skilled engineers, so they do a bit of both. Some specialize in one field or another, and of course what you've got as well as the traditional mechanical and electrical is most big factories, certainly our factories now, are run by PLCs, programmable logistic controllers, and we require some of our technicians to be experts on those, which involves computer programming and fault finding should we have issues with them. So I've given you some information about Wienerberger and sort of apprenticeships in general. What I would say is, if you think that you're interested in maybe doing an apprenticeship, I would like people to apply for an apprenticeship at Wienerberger. I'm looking for the best talent for our company. Second to that, I'm certainly interested to try and help people understand the benefits of apprenticeships within engineering. I talked earlier about the skills shortage within engineering in the UK as a whole, and what that means is there's less people applying for jobs in engineering as the UK as a whole. So companies still need the same amount of engineers. And what happens is when there's a skills shortage, it generally pushes up the salary of engineers and people wanting to work within engineering. So should you join and decide to take part in an engineering apprenticeship, by the time you come to graduate, the jobs that will be out there will be high quality jobs and high paid jobs. If you're interested in engineering or just an apprenticeship in general, the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, their website is absolutely fantastic. You can look on there and see all the different types of apprenticeship standards there are. You can look around. You might have sort of things that you're interested in. It might not be engineering. You can look at skills you've got and interests you've got, and I guarantee you'll be able to find an apprenticeship that would tie in with the skills and interests that you've already got. It's also, depending on age, it's worth researching T levels. So this is something that's a relatively new qualification. It's work-based study time. So you take part in an academic qualification with a work-based study time of a minimum of 45 days within that year, within that 2 years. The end qualification, a T level, is the equivalent of 3 A levels, and I describe it to people as a mini apprenticeship. So you do your T level, you get your qualification that's equivalent to 3 A levels, and you've had some experience within work. And one of the most important things about T levels is you can convert that to a full apprenticeship by extending your study, signing up to an apprenticeship, and you can carry on doing a level 2 or a level 3 qualification as a full 4-year apprenticeship. So if there's a way, if that is a good way, I find a dipping your toe in the water to find out whether you might be interested in apprenticeships or not. The .gov website for apprenticeships, there's a link to a page there. Engineering and manufacturing, it is also very helpful in terms of explaining the different types of roles, the different standards that there are, and again, you get an idea. If you're not interested in engineering, there's all sorts of other apprenticeship standards on there that you can look at to see if it's something you might be interested in. But we tend to find with our applicants to our apprenticeship process, we get probably about 30% of our applicants have started, either done 1 year or 2 years at A levels and realised that academic qualification, academic study is that they've had enough of it. Basically, academic study is maybe not for them, and they want to do something where they can do it based around a job, a work, meaningful work, and you also get paid. You get paid a good salary, and you get paid to study as well. So we tend to find that sometimes, as people leave school, it is a difficult time in terms of trying to decide what you want to do when you've spent so much time at school, and suddenly somebody's saying to you, right, you need to pick what you want to do for the rest of your life as a job. I would say that is not the model anymore. You may well do some academic study, you may well do an apprenticeship and start a job, and the reality is maybe within 5 to 10 years you may retrain anyway. So I wouldn't encourage that there is this pressure that you're trying to select the thing that you want to do for the rest of your life, because the modern world of work is not like that. People do retrain, and it's okay to think, this is what I'm interested in now and I'd like to try it. We tend to find that parents, rightly and wrongly, I guess, are a big influence in young people's lives, and we tend to find that parents would, the advice parents offer to young people is that they should go to university. Certainly in terms of sort of working class backgrounds, parents might push their children towards doing university qualification, because they might say, you know, oh, you'll be the first person in our family that's gone to university, and there's a feeling there that they're breaking down social barriers by sending young people to university, which is okay, and there's nothing wrong with studying at university. But if it's the academic level of qualification people are interested in, you can still do that with an apprenticeship, and you're getting paid at the same time. I certainly feel like myself, apprenticeships are the sort of worst and best kept secret that there is. When we speak to people who have done 2 years with A levels and they want to suddenly join a company and do an apprenticeship, they can't believe you get paid from day one. They can't believe that it's the same level of academic study. And if you have done 1 or 2 years of A levels or higher academic study, there's nothing to stop you applying for an apprenticeship. There are entry level qualifications required to some apprenticeships, mainly around GCSEs in maths and science. But if you've already done an A level, you might have already done an A level in engineering. When you start your apprenticeship, we class that as prior study, accredited prior learning that will map across through the apprenticeship that you're going to do, and you don't have to repeat the same work again. Some of that will count for work that you've already done in terms of your academic study. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to go over and look at the chat to take questions.
Thank you so much for that, Rob. We do appreciate it. So everyone, now is the time to bring in the questions. I have a few myself, actually, that I wanted to maybe kick off. So earlier on, you mentioned that Wienerberger take in, I think you said there's 10 engineer apprenticeship positions. I can imagine you probably get a lot of applications that you do filter through. What can someone do during the application process or put on their application that will make them stand out against everyone else?
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually. So because, like I say, we get people where we have school leavers that are applying at 16, and we get people who might be older, 18, 19, 20, that are applying for the same positions. So I think there's a temptation to think, if I'm 16, I've got no work experience, I've got my GCSEs, I'm up against somebody who's 20 years old, I'm at a disadvantage. But that's not necessarily the case. So the process that we have is that we ask our training providers in our local areas to run our recruitment process for us. So our advice is, if people come to us and say, I've looked on your website, Wienerberger looks like the company I want to work for, we direct them back to the training provider in the region that they live, and they apply to the training provider. The training provider does some basic sifting in terms of entry-level qualifications that we might want them to have, and then we do an interview process whereby our factory managers interview people to get an idea, ask them a few questions, what motivates them, and within that we do see 16-year-olds with no work experience progress equally as well as people who may have work experience. That first sifting is about interests that we feel are important within engineering, within our factories and within our company, and most of them are transferable skills. We want you to have a good level of communication, we want you to have a good level of literacy and numeracy, and we also want to know that you're motivated, that you're going to be able to get up every morning and come to work. And if we say to you, you've got to go to college for a year before you start at the factory, that you're going to be equally as motivated to do that as you would be to come to the factory and sort of do the exciting stuff, taking machines to pieces, stuff like that. The next part of the process, we then have assessment centres, and them assessment centres where we bring everybody together, and they are based around exercises in team building, interpersonal skills. And again, we give people an exercise, and we have people from our factories and our members of staff observing, making notes and scoring people to see if they meet the requirements that we've got. So, you know, a typical example, you get somebody who's a little bit older in a room full of younger people. We're looking, does that person try to encourage people around them? Do they try and encourage people to speak out? Are they encouraging everybody to take part? Do they listen to other people's opinions? Or do they think, oh, I'm the oldest here, this is easy for me, I can take over and look like the best individual person in the room? So it's a very well tried and tested method that we've got. And I think that no matter what your work experience, what your life experience, if you meet that criteria we've got in terms of being interested in an engineering job, then you're in with an equal chance as anybody else.
So there's a one-on-one interview moment in the process, like if you get to that sort of point.
Yeah.
So when someone, because I feel like often, and I am 100% guilty of this, going into interviews for jobs or apprenticeships, you often go in without any preparation and you go, they're just going to ask me questions about me, la di da di da, that kind of stuff. Easy. The easiest thing to talk about in the world is yourself, but it's also the hardest. What kind of advice would you give maybe, someone who hasn't had a lot of experience having a one-on-one interview for a company such as Wienerberger? What advice would you give for someone who does get to that stage?
Yeah, so I would say you're right. You can go to an interview thinking they're going to ask me questions about myself, and I can talk about myself forever. I would say one of the key elements is research on the company. It might be us, it might be somebody else. Research on the company that you've gone for an interview for. A nice easy icebreaker. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Within that, we get some people who come in who have maybe have got that little bit of work experience. We've got people who come in and say, sort of I like working on motorbikes and cars and things like that, and they've got that little bit of engineering experience already. But we have some people who have got none of that, and as I say, it's not a disadvantage. The transferable skills that we're looking for within engineering is that problem-solving mindset, interested in numeracy and literacy, and a term that we use, that trainability. Is somebody willing? They might not know anything about engineering, and that's fine, but are they willing to go to a training provider and learn these new skills? So researching the company, researching the field of engineering or whatever it is that you're going for to be able to talk about it. And also when somebody says, tell us a little bit about yourself, personally, my advice would be have a little sort of rehearsed speech that you do about yourself, where you can say the key points. Depending on your age and your experience, you'll cover different things. We want to know about how you do at school, the sorts of things you do in your spare time, and other things that you may do that are transferable skills in terms of the world of work. Your only work experience might have been a paper round, it might have been voluntary work. But that's completely fine. And research a little bit about the company, prepare a little speech about yourself, and then it feels more like it flows. Because if you say to somebody in an interview, tell us a little bit about yourself, and that potentially could make it look like you've not prepared at all.
And I mean, going into an interview, 9 times out of 10, you're not actually going to know what questions are going to be asked of you, but most of the time you will get asked, tell us a bit about yourself. And I think, exactly what you say. You got to be ready to talk about that.
Yeah.
And as well, like, I guess, do you find, I mean, no, you just said that. I'm not even going to ask that. I'm about to ask you something that you've already repeated. I was going to ask about, I guess when you talk about yourself, you can talk about your work experience, but you're probably also genuinely interested on what kind of person they are and what their hobbies are and values, things they like to do, that kind of stuff as well.
That's right. And one good example that springs to mind that I already mentioned was somebody who did quite a bit of voluntary work, that talked to us about the voluntary work that they did. What we're doing is we're trying to decode the information that you give us, and that says to us, if you're willing to go do something for nothing, to put it bluntly, you've probably got the skills and the interest there, if you turn your hand to it, where you'd be willing to come to work and do it, where you was paid a salary, and you're gaining a qualification out of it.
My next question for you is a day in the life of an apprentice. So say it's Tuesday, you're turning up. What's the day start to finish? What does it look like?
So a day in the life of an apprentice would be, depending where you was. So our apprenticeships are a 4-year apprenticeship, and the first year is full-time academic study. So they go to our training providers and they have a full year whereby they start with a level 2 qualification, they complete that level 2 qualification, and they also do a level 3 BTEC as well. So they go through extra English and maths should they require it, and they go through the technical requirements of electrical maintenance, mechanical maintenance, CAD drawing, basic principles of science. So they're the sorts of things generally that that an apprentice would study within that first year. When they're graduated and they come to the factory, a day in the life at the factory would be very much like most of our technicians. So you start at the factory, you would have a pre-work brief with your supervisor. It may well be that there's a list of certain jobs you need to complete that day. You may well turn up at the factory and there's a breakdown. So you're looking at working with your mentor, the person as an apprentice. You assign a mentor. The person that you're working with will then say to you, right, come with me. This piece of machinery we've never worked on before. I want you to watch me do this, and then at sort of pertinent points they would say, right, now you have a go at that, now you do it, and that's how we bring them on. And towards the later stages, third and fourth year, we would expect apprentices with the correct amount of supervision to be able to work on jobs on their own with somebody standing back just making sure that that they're safe and that they're not doing anything they shouldn't be. So it does increase. We do expect in the first instance that apprentices will be under a lot of supervision and they'll be learning by watching, but the whole point of the apprenticeship is that what we want is learning by doing. We want apprentices to have their own toolkits. We want them to be able to take certain pieces of equipment to pieces, put them back together, strip and inspect. So depending on factory and during the time of your apprenticeship, it could look quite different.
Now, you speak about mentorship. I think mentorship is so important in any field. Are you assigned, is it just like a one-on-one, or is there a group of you that are assigned to one mentor, or is the whole intake assigned to one mentor?
So it could be different. So in terms of somebody looking after them holistically on a sort of high level basis, that would be myself. So that's part of my role. I check in with apprentices while they're at college. I check in with them while they're in the factory. On a day-to-day basis, they will have the maintenance manager at the factory will make sure that they are sort of allocated jobs, make sure that risk assessments are in place and current for the task that they're doing. And then, as opposed to being signed a single mentor, we have groups of our engineering staff that are mentors and understand the process. So you might work for a few weeks with X person, and then you move to a different area of the factory and you go to Y person who is also a mentor, and you spend a bit of time with them. So you're not placed with an individual and you work with them for 4 years. There's various people in the organisation that mentor the apprentices with different skill sets, different responsibilities, to make sure the apprentice gets a broad an experience as possible.
Now, my second last question for you before we do wrap up, you've spoken about a huge amount of highlights that come with an apprenticeship at Wienerberger. What is your favorite part of the program, personally?
I would say the favourite part of my programme is what we've just started. So as well as the apprentices doing their academic study at the training provider in their region, and then they'll work at the factory and do the on-the-job training, we also do a residential training scheme within Wienerberger where every year group, 3 times a year for 1 month, they come to our main training centre and our main factory at Doncaster. We put them up in an hotel. We get them over to the factory every morning, and we go through very specific Wienerberger training to do with the pieces of equipment that we've got, the types of PLCs and software that we run in our factories, and also how a brick factory works. So, for example, within our company, we've got experts on clay and concrete because they're some of the raw materials that we use. We take the apprentices out to the quarries and we get to see them digging clay out. We get to see the clay go through the labs. We test it to make sure it's the right quality. So just getting the apprentices together, it's great fun. The apprentices enjoy it, and we do stuff that you wouldn't normally do as another employee, never mind as an apprentice at another company. You get to see a much more broader spectrum of what happens within the company to give you a better understanding. If I don't fasten that bolt up, if I don't fasten that piece of equipment down, what is the outcome further down the process that means that we have to stop making bricks and we have to stop making money? A lot of people within a lot of companies know that they need to do a certain thing at 10 o'clock every Tuesday morning. What we want to instill into the apprentices is why you need to do it.
Yeah, for
And if
sure.
you do it at 5 past, what happens then? It's the greater depth of understanding that we want to instill within our apprentices.
And then finally, to wrap things up, have you got any pieces of advice for anyone that's thinking of applying?
Yeah, I would say as much as the parents and people like that, sort of guardians in your life, will want to offer you advice and give you the benefit of their experience. As a 16, 17 plus year old, what you've got to think is it's you that's got to go to college. It's you that's got to sign up to that company to do it. So please make sure you do your own research. Please use the link that I've provided, the apprenticeship service, and try and think of things that you're interested in and how they transfer, or the skills you might have might transfer into an area of expertise or an apprenticeship that you might be interested in. But please do your research. There's so many people out there that are willing to talk to young people, and this week is National Apprenticeship Week, so this is very timely. There's so much information on social media at the minute that will hopefully allow you to have as much exposure to as many different sort of topics, subjects, training providers, so you really are making an informed decision.
Well, that is going to bring us to a close. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. Thank you, Rob Jollins, for taking the time to be here. We do really appreciate it, especially in such a crazy week for you, it seems. We all hope that you enjoy the rest of the Humber Apprenticeship Showcase, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
Fantastic. Thank you.